Yes, y'all. We're back. Another episode of Shoot the Breeze is episode 231. We're progressing along, man. Didn't feel that long ago that we were doing episode 200. Now we're on episode 231, man. Um, do me a favor before we do anything, hit the like button. Share the show on your social media. Email or call a friend, text a friend, have them come and join us as well. Let's try to get the numbers of shoot a little bit higher than what they typically are. Let's try to get true conversion numbers. We got 1,500 people. We should have about 30 people. It was a Pan-African discussion, pro-Black discussion, so we're not going to get the kind of conversion that you would usually get, but conversion is usually 2 to 5%. Let's get at least so of these discussions. The deal I like to come through before we start the show officially, that you guys know what we have in store today. We're going to talk about the renewed war on Cuba, and as we see now today, there have been strikes on Iran as well. These guys are gearing up to be hostile throughout the Caribbean. Also, as you saw, certain leadership from the Caribbean speaking this week, quite embarrassing, discussing the Cuba issue and the U.S. issue with Cuba. We're going to introduce you to your new global empire. We're going to talk about some Ghanaian elites, whether or not we ever held them accountable for their interactions and their participation within the Ma'afa. We're going to talk about the African concept of God. And we're going to discuss, there's an app for that too. It's appalling what that app is for, but this is what we got to overcome. We'll talk about all those things tonight. Shout out to Lord of Slaughter, who's out there in the chat, giving the RBG colors and the black fist, black power. Appreciate you for being here. I didn't ask, but if you guys can hear my voice, drop a 1. You should be able to hear me, though. It looks like it. Drop a 1 for me. What we're going to do now is start the show officially. Shout out to the matron who's in the chat as well. We're going to start the show officially on the other side. I'll introduce any and all of my panelists as well as drop Shoot the Breeze topic number 1. Thanks, matron, for the 1. So do stay tuned.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAC Radio. Welcome to the Bitter Medicine Podcast, where it's all about Black empowerment. Our show focuses on Black news and entertainment, arts, science, economics, history, people, and strategies that uplift, empower, and motivate Africans within the diaspora. And now your host, whose favorite color is black, Goku.
Welcome back to the Bitter Medicine Podcast. I am your host, Koku. Just want to remind you guys before we get the show rolling that this show is part of a podcast network called KWAZ Radio. There are other shows on the network you are invited to tune into.
This is D Webb with the Harsh Reality Podcast, asking you to tune in where we tackle the news of the day that affects our community, only on KWAZ Radio.
Peace, family. This is Oni, inviting you to listen to the Pro-Black Perspective, where black problems are addressed with black solutions.
Greetings, fam. Tune in to The Learning Curve with me, the Revolutionary Matron on KWAZ Radio.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Yes, indeed. Make sure you guys also tune into BBN Network. That's Brother Bakari. Make sure you tune in to Kofi the Black Critic, Realm in the Bush, and last but not least, Forecast Radio. Make sure you also, I meant to repost that, but make sure you guys also pick up Forecast's book, recently dropped on Amazon as well. With that said, man, let me introduce some of my panelists tonight. Black Steel, how are you this week?
I'm doing wonderful, brother. How are you?
I'm hanging in there, man. I'm good. Black Steel, did you get a new YouTube handle?
Yeah. I updated it.
Okay, cool.
So you can tag me and stuff now.
Yeah. Now I can tag you. Okay, cool. Thanks for being here, by the way. Buana, how are you this week? Buana, you're muted if you're speaking. I'm not sure. All right, maybe Buana's a little busy right now. But shout out to Trigger Happy in the chat saying peace. Buana says he'll be right back from the chat. Shout out to again Lord of Slaughter and the Revolutionary Matron. Shout out to all of you for being here. Without further ado, man, let's get right into it. Shoot the Breeze topic number 1 says the renewed war on Cuba. The renewed war on Cuba. This comes with a link. It takes us to X. And I don't know. For some reason, I can't. Okay, there it goes. So you see my screen. This is a post from Max Blumenthal. He says Trump openly states that he's imposing a quote-unquote humanitarian threat to force regime change in Cuba. Quote, there's an embargo. There's no oil. There's no money. There's no anything. A straightforward war crime. Confession. Let's see Trump speaking for himself.
Warning to the mission. They don't even have jet fuel to get for airplanes to take off. They're clogging up their runway. We're talking to Cuba right now. And Marco Rubio talking to Cuba right now. Absolutely a deal because it's really a humanity threat. And we have a lot of great Cuban Americans. They're going to be very happy when they're going to be able to go back and say hello to their relatives and do things that they should have been allowed to do for a long time. I'm very interested in the people that are here that were treated so badly by Castro and the Cuban authorities. They have been treated horribly. So we'll see how it all turns out. But Cuba and us, we are in a time.
Consider an operation like the one in Venezuela?
I don't want to answer that. Why would I answer that? If I was, it wouldn't be a very tough operation. As you could figure.
Yeah, man. Bold-faced people, man. I had noticed
warning Cuba to make. We have a lot of.
I had noticed there was another video someone posted, and they said, "Sound familiar?" I just want to play it real quick. It's short, just to see what it's about.
ואנחנו נוהגים בהתאם. אנחנו מתאים.
That sounds like an Israeli saying that, basically what Trump was saying about Cuba is what they're doing with Gaza. No electricity, no water, et cetera, et cetera. So it's the same kind of warfare that's going on there. What do you guys, both on the panel and in the chat, what do you guys think about the position Cuba is currently in? Provide Trigger said the audio is poor. I'll work on that. I'll work on that as best as I can. But what do you guys say is about the situation going on in Cuba currently under this present U.S. regime? Let me start with Buana, who didn't get a chance to introduce himself earlier. Buana, how are you this week?
I'm good, Coco. How are you, brother?
I'm good, man. Good.
Yeah,
all right?
Yeah, man. I hope Black Steel is good as well. No, the people of Cuba are resilient people. They're gonna be okay. This is not the first blockade the United States has tried against Cuba. The oil situation may be a little bit of a different scenario, but Cuba has always been innovative in trying to keep that country running. Right now, they're trying to use solar power to keep the lights on and different kinds of things. So they've been working around the United States for a long time, and Trump is just another United States president in a long line of other United States presidents, which was trying to really destabilize and undermine that nation. I think that they may have a short victory, but the American government don't understand sometimes. I don't. Well, maybe they're doing it for purposes of politics, to appear to be strong, and they'll get themselves in a situation where they get into something immediately, but their grandchildren will be paying the cost of them initiating these ridiculous wars. Ridiculous wars. They just unalived the leader of Iran. I think they just unalived him. I'm not 100% sure if he's dead or alive, but they're going to be involved in another kind of a situation in Iran, and they don't realize it's just that Trump is creating a whole World War III scenario. It's a nightmare scenario just to cover up his crimes that he would have done, with Epstein. This is an Epstein war. This is an Epstein war. The attack, and with the Cuban situation, Marco Rubio is the orchestrator of what's going on in Cuba. Marco Rubio never lived in Cuba. Yes, he was really born in the United States, but he is trying to play a little Spanish conqueror under this German or American regime right now. He's trying to play a Spanish conqueror, going into these Spanish-speaking and Caribbean countries, playing Cortez, playing Cortez. But these things are going to be short-lived. They're going to be short-lived because you may be in power right now, but what is going to be the ultimate cost of you doing and creating such a disaster situation in the Caribbean and now in the Middle East? You went to South America and you took out the Venezuelan president. Now you're surrounding Cuba, stopping them from getting oil. Now you're getting in a war with Iran. Now listen, man, sometimes you could spread yourself so thin. And the people within the United States, it seemed to be like, there is a war being waged within the United States. So it's just complete war. You put a man in office who is a tyrant, man. He is tragic. He is tragic for the world, but he is tragic for his country as well. And I don't see this playing out very well. I think it is going to have many unintended consequences. And unfortunately, he may not even be alive to see what his reckless behavior is going to create within his country, because they complain about immigrants coming there and outside of it. But I say the people of Cuba are going to survive. They're gonna survive. But that's what I have to say on this, Coco.
All right, Bon. I have a follow-up question. I'll wait till Black Steel gives us his thoughts on the renewed war in Cuba. Black Steel would say.
Well, this is just a continuance of the United States pattern of imperialism and aggression that we've been seeing, not just under this administration, but all U.S. presidents going back to George Washington have been imperialists and wanting a desire for empire. I think what we see with Trump is just the honesty about the whole situation. It's a situation where the United States is basically just upfront and bold with it. There's no more pretense of diplomacy, rules-based order, international law. Trump has said himself, the only thing restraining him is his own morality. So the checks and balances, the laws, and the other implements that were built into the system to restrain such tyranny are done away with. So now we have an administration that is openly committing war crimes. Not to say Obama didn't either, right? But they don't even pretend to disguise what it really is, right? So he can sit up here and say, "Oh, well, I'm the president of Venezuela now," or he can do what he's doing in Cuba or Iran. And the ultimate goal, the big enchilada, is really China, right? So the United States, what they're doing is they're doing everything possible to encircle China, because China is the biggest threat to U.S. global hegemony. China wants a multipolar world. And I think a multipolar world is good for everyone, not just China, but also for Africa as well, where you have countries, no matter how big or how small, are sovereign over their own territory. Right. But the United States no longer does not want a multipolar world. They want a world where the U.S. has full spectrum dominance, land, sea, air, space. That is what they want. So this is part of the issue, that China is the biggest threat to what they consider to be global U.S. dominance. So the long-term plan is to cut off China from its resources. So, for example, much of China's oil comes from Venezuela and Iran. Cuba was supported with ice fuel through, again, by Venezuela. So much of Cuba's fuel came from Venezuela. All right, you cut off Venezuela, now they can starve Cuba of oil. Not only that, they're threatening other countries that support Cuba in any way with crippling economic sanctions. So it's the power of the petrodollar, with the United States being the world's reserve currency. It's been used and it's weaponized against the people of the world, right? So where you can't buy oil outside of the U.S., outside of their power structure. And not only that, if you try to find alternatives, they see you as hostile. So then this is part of the issue, is that now Cuba, of course, was a challenge to U.S. hegemony. Not the fact that Cuba was any type of militarily challenging the United States, but Cuba was the threat of a good example, right? Cuba, prior to the revolution of 1959, was very much, almost in a feudal system. Only 4% of the population could read. Rampant poverty, homelessness, starvation. The Cuban Revolution come on, and we definitely is room to critique the Cuban Revolution, but the quality and the standard of living of Cuba was raised exponentially. Cuba is one of the few countries in the world with a 100% literacy rate. You can't say that about the United States. There's a quality of life, the life expectancy of Cuba is higher than that of the United States. Cuba exports doctors all over the world. The United States wants to end that. So what the Cuban people and the revolution represent is not so much of a military threat, but an ideological threat to the United States. The threat of a good example, that when freed up from capitalist restraints, socialism can thrive. And they can't have that, right? So that's why Cuba's under attack. That's why the war against Cuba is escalating. Cuba had provided material support to apartheid South Africa. I'm sorry, to African fighting apartheid, I should say. It supplied military support, weapons, military training. Black revolutionaries like Assad Shakur were able to go to Cuba and live out their days freely and in peace. So this is a problem. This represents something that, in the words of the United States, wasn't supposed to happen, wasn't supposed to succeed. So they've done everything possible to undermine the Cuban people. So like Buana said, I do believe that Cuba will survive this. They will come out of this. I would not, however, I'm gonna say this. Trump is a madman and he's an evil man. So what they did in Venezuela, I would not put that beyond what they would do in Cuba. But ultimately the goal is to isolate China, right? So that's why you have the U.S. Navy in the South China Sea trying to prevent China from having access to open ocean. All right. This is why they are attacking Iran, because Iran is a large part of China's Belt and Road Initiative, where they want to consolidate and kind of create another corridor instead of having to go and get into a confrontation with the U.S. Navally. Now they just go through land. Iran, Cuba, Venezuela, these are all part of a larger initiative to create a multipolar world. And unfortunately, that is why the Cuban people are caught in the crossfire. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
So now we're here, and I appreciate that, Black Steel. That was a very, very good and concise breakdown to both of you, actually. But, you know, I was going to bring another topic next week if no one else did, but since we're here, let's talk about it. One of the things, and I'm not referencing Buana here. I'm referencing it just in general. A lot of people say Cuba will survive. Black Steel said similar. Cuba will survive. My one issue with that is that it always sounds to me that we're saying Cuba will survive. Just let Cuba be. They'll figure out something. But Cuba is within a region, a very specific region called the Caribbean, man. And I'm worried about what the other Caribbean leaders are going to do or not going to do. We saw, what's her name? Kamala from Trinidad speaking this past week, I think it was, to a lot of CARICOM leaders. And, you know, since then I've seen her doing an interview from Trinidad where she was talking about how the U.S. has soldiers there and it might be the case that a base is put there. And from what she's been told, they ain't gonna have no power over the Trinidadian citizens. What do you mean from what you've been told? So clearly there's no sovereignty. And it's only gonna get worse. Now, should the Caribbean, the other members of CARICOM, should they be looking to defy the U.S. and help Cuba? Is it possible even? Buana, what say you?
Not in that way. No. What the government of Bahamas have done is they have recruited a lot of the skilled labor, in particular in the medical industry. So you have in the country right now, you have a lot of Cuban doctors here. You have a lot of Cuban doctors. So they are able to earn a Bahamian kind of salary and send remittances back home to that country, because we are a very small nation, so we only can do our part. Also, in the education industry, you have Cuban teachers who come here and they teach Spanish. So the Bahamian government has been working along with the Cuban government as much as possible. Not only that, you also have tourism. You also have tourism. A lot of Bahamians go to Cuba for different kinds of reasons, but they do go to Cuba. You have a lot of Bahamian and Cuban who have relationships. They've married one another. So there is still a bit of an economic discourse going on, maybe an informal one and a formal one, but not to the extent to where what you would like to see with the whole Caribbean coming together. Because in terms of global affairs and global matters, I don't think the Caribbean has enough strength yet to be short callers, So when we do work, because I'm knowing Cuba does these things throughout the Caribbean, not only just the Bahamas itself. I'm sure they have arrangements with Jamaica and Trinidad and other countries as well. You just saw the video last week where the gentleman was talking about Cuban labor being in Guyana. So there is a way in where Cuba is still able to get some kind of economic situation going in terms of the United States trying to blockade and stop that. So there's still gonna always be a an arrangement, a relationship, a relationship between us and the Cuban government, because we are not enemies with Cuba. We are not enemies of Cuba. We have a relationship with Cuba just as we have a relationship with the United States. Now, the government of the United States may say that you can no longer have a relationship with Cuba. That may be very problematic because the Bahamian government will have to decide. Because if the Bahamian government, they have put themselves in a scenario where so much of their economy is based off of tourism, so much of it. So if the United States government tells them, the American people, we don't want you to go to the Bahamas anymore in terms of tourism, that would put us in a very sticky situation because we put ourselves in a situation where we are so solely dependent on that one particular industry. Now, I think that having a relationship with other friends and other partners is a good scenario, a good situation. A good situation. You can't just have this relationship where it's just this one unilateral relationship or bilateral relationship between the United States and the Caribbean countries. You must develop other friends where you could develop other kinds of economy. And I think that what's the name? Mia Motley has been trying to do that with the African countries, but because of the distance, there is some restraint in that as well. There's some restraint in doing these kinds of things, but she is kind of getting the ball rolling, But I think that we need to develop other relationships outside of just the United States. I think that now I'm seeing a whole lot of Bahamians taking a lot of that business to Panama and going and spending their money in Panama. The economy, a lot of our economy used to go straight to South Florida, but now a lot of that money is being diverted into Panama. But you see the United States and Panama as well saying we're gonna take back, we take it back to Panama Canal. But it's just a sticky situation, and for the Caribbean countries to collectively get together and say, well, we're going to stand up in the face of imperialism, that is a very difficult posture, especially when so much of your products and goods is coming from the North. I think that we need to develop a greater relationship and arrangement with at least South America, let alone Africa, the African countries, and other possible countries like China, and these kinds of scenarios. And it is happening, but it's happening very slowly. And with tyrants like these coming along every once in a while, it kind of distorts the arrangement. I think that after Trump dies or demits office, that relationship will formulate again, and then you kind of creating stronger and stronger bonds and ties with different kinds of people. But as long as you have these tyrant regimes in the house, and you have these little Cortezes running around the Caribbean saying, well, we coming back to invade y'all because this is our backyard, I think that is stifle a whole lot of progress in the Caribbean, and with the Cuban, because it indirectly affects the Cuban people as well. But that's how I see this particular thing,
Wanna provide figures that I ask a question on the screen. I'll get to that in a second. But just quickly, don't you think at some point it's just better to just be done and figure it out? I know that's a scary proposition, but listen, man, these Europeans did shit like that. They sailed boats to places and burned the boats and said, no, we will take this line here. When are we gonna just decide, you know what, man? We will figure it out. You stop sending the tourists, okay. We'll figure out what we can do and what relationships we can have with our neighbors in the Caribbean, etc. Don't you think at some point we should just get to that?
I think that yes, I do. But the other side to that scenario is You can't, if somebody was an addict, a person who's an addict, who used to his drugs, you can't stop an addict cold turkey from getting drugs. You have to wean addicts off of their drugs. What's the drugs in the Caribbean? The drugs used to cheap products and services. They used to getting ordering stuff online on Amazon and getting their American goods. They used to watching Netflix and having their television. They used to certain things. They are addicts for it. So just to say, oh, we're going to completely stop ourselves from these addictions and try something new, try something different, I'ma tell you, that they could create chaos. You have to wean addicts off of the drugs that the United States has unfortunately addicted the Caribbean people with. You have to wean them off of these things or provide an alternative solution that is still the same thing, but at least it's different. You have to wean people off of things. But I do agree with you. There are many people in these countries who actually do believe these things. But the practicalities of it is many of the Caribbean people are addicts. What you can tell the black women when they say they can't import blonde wigs no more from the United States, that might cause a riot. You might get a riot. But like I say, you have to wean people off of these things. You have to re-educate people, and it takes time. And I know that you are looking at the situation maybe a little bit ahead of the curve, because you understand the situation better than a lot of people do on not only a political level, but a historical level, on an economic level. You say, well, we would be better if we was to just get rid of them completely. Not everybody. As a matter of fact, the masses of people don't understand the scenario like that. The masses, and I think that it takes time. It takes time, brother. And I know you can say, well, I ain't got the time, but it takes time. It takes time, bro.
No, I agree. Things take time. My thing is, man, how much time it gonna take when these things are clearly, like right now it's upon us, right? There was a idea of a federation for the Caribbean back in the '60s, and we let lousy arguments stop that from happening. Fair stop some of us from engaging, like our country, and people tying their future to the U.S. and all that stuff. And then the other part was the bigger countries in the region were arguing about who's gonna have the headquarters. I mean, come on, man, what are we talking about? We dropped the ball because we couldn't figure out if the headquarters was going to be in Port of Spain or Kingston. You know what I mean? So I understand things take time, but like Anthony McPhail said, and shout out to Anthony McPhail, was his birthday this past week, I think. Yeah, this past week. Like Anthony McPhail said on the panel one time, he said, if you got to take 100 years or 200 or whatever, it's just as cheap don't happen again. And that's something we got to take serious. At some point, is shit or get off the pot, as they say. And I think that's something we have to be concerned with. Provide Triggers for Evolution asked a question about how does Cuba get its oil, Barna? You have any thoughts on that?
No, the issue when it comes to oil, there is other forms of energy. Okay? So there is the nuclear energy option. There is the solar energy option. There is the wave is not necessarily the wave energy is not as good as people may seem, because you're living around the seas and things of that nature. But I think that the Caribbean countries need to find alternative options in terms of energy and the energy usage. When you're talking about kilowatts and large amounts of power that you need really to bolster your society, I think that we need to really seriously consider looking at alternative means and forms of energy, and look into the world and see where that's actually happening, and try to implement it within the country itself. I think that oil is a resource that is finite. and really and truly, the world gonna run out of oil in a minute. So you have to find viable alternatives of energy supplies in the world itself. And I think that Cuba is currently trying to do it, but they are not necessarily doing it on a country level and trying to run a country itself. So that's the greatest problem in the world right now, is solving the energy question in terms of oil or oil usage, and trying to find other viable means of energy to really keep your country going. That's the big question. And whoever solved that question, whether it's through solar or other means, I think that's going to change the game. I really do. I think that's going to change the game in the world, and I really think that China is at the forefront of it. But we'll see. Like you say, this particular situation, what Black Steel was mentioning, that China gets a lot of oil, really the majority of their oil out of Iran, and that's the move where the United States is trying to actually stop the progression of China being a part of this whole superpower argument. They're trying to go there and trying to stop that from happening, but that's an eventuality. That's an eventuality, even if it means I don't want to talk about World War III, but I'll just leave it there, Coco. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about it, but as a collective, I think we need to talk about it.
I agree, Coco. I agree.
Yeah, but Black Steel, what are your thoughts on the follow-up question from Provide Triggers about oil, and your general thoughts on the region coming together and really helping Cuba?
I think they're going to have to, because and this is why it was so important to deal with Gaza, right? Because what was being done to Gaza is now being done to Cuba. Gaza's fate, Cuba's fate, is the fate of every country that opposes U.S. hegemony, right? This is the reality that people have to face. For those people that doesn't care, I don't matter about that stuff, you should matter, because if you don't, it's going to happen to you. So I believe, sorry, my dog, go away, go. Anyways, America has to be challenged, has to be opposed. They're going to kill you whether you fight them or not, so you might as well just fight them, right? How they want to do it, and I applaud Mexico, because Mexico had sent some oil to Cuba, and look what happened with the cartel. All of a sudden, all the cartels are exploding, killing people all over the place, right? This is very telling. So Mexico did challenge the blockade. Mexico did send some oil to Cuba, and Cuba said, we'll just deal with the sanctions. So the United States is going to be hostile to any country that challenges their hegemony. You can't bargain with this beast, right? Look at Iran, for example. The Iranians had a treaty. They were not going to produce nuclear weapons, and they had regular inspections that come in to prove they didn't have nuclear weapons, and it didn't matter, because then once Trump became president, he threw away the deal that the Iranians made. He said that, they're violating the deal, even though they weren't violating the deal, and now they're bombing them. So they're going to bomb you. They're going to attack you no matter what you do. So at this point, all you got to do, at this point, you realize this beast is coming. You got to prepare yourself. I'm not in charge of the Caribbean government, right? And also, too, if you're willing to challenge them economically, what are you going to do about the Navy? And this is the problem, because there's not currently a military that exists that can challenge the United States in open warfare. They're very poor when it comes to asymmetrical warfare, which we've proven in Afghanistan and Iraq and so on and so forth. But when it comes to a head-up fate, no one's sank a U.S. carrier since the Japanese in World War II. So Iran might be doing it soon, though, if we look at the way they're going with those hypersonic missiles they got from China. But standing up and say, no, we will not let you continue to starve this island of people who have done nothing to you. It is crazy. that they can call Cuba a state-sponsored terror while bombing children in Iran and Iraq and Afghanistan and Gaza. It's an insult. However, I agree they're going to have to stand up sometime and say we're not going to tolerate this. Mexico stood up. We see what's going on. I think one of the weaknesses, I think the U.S. empire is that, and it has to be a coordinated attack, right? It's like playing whack-a-mole. You know, if you ever went to Chuck E. Cheese as a kid and you get a little thing that pops up, hit whack-a-mole, right? They can't. What they do, they got a fire in South America. They got to put it out. They got a fire in Iran. They got to put it out. They got a fire in Latin America, Africa, so on and so forth. And that's why there needs to be a coordinated movement. They can't be everywhere at once. You got 2/3 of the U.S. fleet in the Persian Gulf right now. This would be the perfect time, the absolute perfect time for some moves to be made, right? But it has to be coordinated. It has to be strategic. And unfortunately, there's too many traitors. There's too many moles. There's too many rats who are willing to sell out their people for the chance to get a few trinkets from the U.S. But I do think that there are opportunities that can be made to break away, and it's going to have to happen, because if not, then the fate of Gaza, the fate of Cuba, Iran is the fate of every country that refused to bow to hegemony to the U.S. I've heard that too about the Ayatollah being killed. However, the Israelis pointing it out. I don't trust Israel, right? I don't trust them at all. If they made a martyr of the Ayatollah, they're in for a big shot. If they think killing him is going to change anything, they're not. But I've heard that too. But until we see a body, I don't believe it.
The Ayatollah Khomeini was 86 years old. He wasn't really calling no shots, man. I mean, they could take him out, but the reality is that the Iran government right now, matter of fact, they did have a succession plan in place, and the Ayatollah Khomeini wasn't calling no shots, really and truly, not Iran. So, but I do think that when you threaten Iran, I think that what is going to happen is China is going to get involved because of that oil situation scenario, and I think that when China gets involved, I think that Russia is going to get involved. And if that was to happen, and like I said, I really don't like to speak on these things because it will mean a whole large amount. It's gonna be bad. It's gonna be really bad, man.
Yeah, this is why we should have been preparing for this thing coming up, man. I can't believe that in my lifetime I can potentially see, we've been overtaken, man. Made vassal states and all this kind of stuff. Man. That's what's going to happen to Trinidad now. That lady, and Trinidad needs to deal with that too, by the way. The people needs to get that lady up out of the paint too, man, because that's a tough situation. She went up there talking about we are capitalists and we can't stand for a dictatorship, with all Cuba has done for Trinidad as well, and for the rest of the region, man. That is a sad look right now, man. But a lot of people from Trinidad and stuff is getting on a case about it. They're kind of getting on the Jamaica PM's case about his kind of fence sitting. You know what I mean? So apparently they did kill the Ayatollah. Trick Hoppy said they confirmed it.
Oh, well, he's like Juan is 87 years old, man. He was one of the longest in this world anyway.
Yeah. So, but we can't ignore these conversations anymore. And the average person, the average citizen in this region needs to be educated better. I know that, people in charge are afraid of the populace being smart, but it's time for these guys to move around as well. And the people really need to speak up and get leadership that's going to actually work to change something. We can't be talking about this. We've been talking about it for 60 years already, probably more. We can't be talking about this still 60 years, and we're talking about how change is slow and all this kind of stuff. It's too detrimental. It's too important to our future, our children, and how our children are, how they live their lives and stuff like that. It's tough. It's tough. We got to get serious for real.
Well, Koku. The good scenario is that I could see in this country that the one of the prime ministers did decide to have other relationships with other people, in particular China. You have a whole lot of people they actually bring in terms of transportation, buses and electronics out of China. But the United States still have a relationship with China too, and even though they call them the enemy, but he did. We do have different. We are starting to create different kinds of relationships with different kinds of people, which I do think is actually an absolute good thing. And I think that where you see the movement of people is being redirected not only towards the north, but redirected towards the south, which is I feel is also a good thing. Even though Panama is not an English-speaking country, you see a lot of Bahamians still veering towards the south. That is a good dynamic to have, because we must have other relationships with other groups of people, so there can be an alternative. You need your alternative. You need alternative relationships. That's what I mean.
Yeah, and those relationships have to be sensible too, man. You mentioned China. Let's be real. We didn't have a good deal from China. We allowed China to send how much thousands of their people, and as you come to find out, a lot of people they send is criminals. You know what I mean? We gotta start really. We gotta get to the big table now and have big table thinking and make the deals that allow us to be able to leverage some of these foreign deals with the people who are actually in our region around us, man. And that's the thing. I can't remember if I have it for tonight. I don't think so. But like one of the things we will talk about it next week is like Africa tends to have artillery from these countries that the shit is already old. It's broken down, and now Africans, again, we'll talk about it in a prompt next week. Now Africans are starting to look within. Let's build our own. Let's build our own stuff. Let's do our own research and development. That's what I'm saying. We have been doing stuff with other people, sure, but have they been good deals? Look what some years back, not a couple. It's been a while now. When they found some oil in the Bahamas, the deal was like 12 cents a dollar. The Bahamas gets 12 cents for every dollar. Come on, man. And the oil is in our region. You know what I mean? We got to make better deals. And it starts with the education, to be quite frank. It starts with the education. The children growing up must learn what it is to be sovereign. If you're truly sovereign, what it is, what kind of lingo we don't accept. What Kamala did the other day was embarrassing, though. That was embarrassing what she did the other day. You know, and in general, Caribbean leaders are afraid. And I get why you're afraid. It's a funny position to be in, but we should have been planned for this from before. You know. Anyway, if there's no last thoughts on this, man, let's go to the next prompt. In the chat, Trigger Happy says, island countries are like toothpicks. They can only be strong when put together, or they get broken by bigger countries. Absolutely, man. You know, Provide Trigger says, CARICOM has to figure out how best to collectively strategize its leverage when dealing with the U.S. There needs to be multi-regional alliances to cope with the U.S.'s predatory hegemony. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah,
I would say that the changes. Sorry for interrupting, Kuku. I would say the changes that Caribbean people are looking for. You cannot look at the CARICOM. You can't look at CARICOM. Just as when you talk about changes in the African continent, you cannot look at the African Union. These things are very subsidized by the very same people who you're trying to break away from. I think that the leadership of these people, in terms of the prime ministers and all these, you have to appeal to the people. Yes, you must organize. I believe in organizations, but I think that you must have to, just as the AES had to break away from from the from the African Union. I think that the same scenario has to happen with Caribbean countries, either collectively coming together and saying we're going to do it this way rather than do it that way. Either Caribbean countries have to decide to do that, or the people within them, the Caribbean countries, have to create organizations, within of themselves to make things happen, because you can't depend on CARICOM. It's dependent on CARICOM is like depending on the AU. You just appealing to the same people who you're trying to remove yourself from. And I think that that's hustling backwards. But
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. Good stuff. Let's go to Shooter Breeze topic number 2. Shooter Breeze topic number 2 says, meet your new global empire. This comes with a link that's going to take us to YouTube. This was kind of jokey to me when I saw it, to be honest. We're going to watch it, and then we'll discuss it. Yeah, I telling y'all now, I could be shitty if a robot drop kicked me in my back during during the battle. You send one of these shits after me. But um, I will say it's very interesting how they utilize their design language. Like you could tell China creates this stuff, right? They use their own design language, and it's steeped in their culture. You see what I'm saying? And that's something we need to keep in mind when we do things, technological and otherwise, should be steeped in our tradition and culture as well. So that's a interesting thing to notice here. But like I said, I'll be shitty if a robot fucking karate chops me and messes me up. But Black Seal, what say you to meet your new global empire?
You know, um, I think the Chinese have always been innovative, right? But I think they realize that we're in a new type of warfare now, and you may have to, and a lot of times these drones are proven to be very effective, very effective. Look at how the Ukrainians have used drones in against the Russians. Even that, so they understand that the future warfare is not just going to be about manpower. It's going to be about robotics, AI, and everything else like that. And I think the United States realize that too, which is why they're trying to cut off the rare earth material. Get rare earth materials and make deals for that as well, because they understand that much of the future of warfare is going to be done by robots, not just for infiltration, but even for learning and fighting against their overlords and everything else like that. I think that this is something that everybody should be working on, honestly. I really do. I think that African people need to be getting on this. And the drones are relatively inexpensive too. I mean, for $1,000, you can get some drones and work together. And I think that's kind of the deal that Burkina Faso was making with Iran, working with getting some of these drones, because these drones are very effective. I think some we're going to have to do. So I think all this really is just a show, but it's just something for me, just kind of looking at this. Like, it's funny. I understand it's meant to be art, but I can also see the veiled threat within it as well, right? I can see the plan that they have. Okay, yeah, we can make our robots dance. We can also kill you too. So I think that's also a factor that can be said as well. That it can be used for entertainment, but also it just speaks to a better future. How the future warfare, as we see it, has changed significantly. You're not going to have any pitched battles. They're going to have those drones show up first to take out the enemy, deal with them as they feel necessary. That's definitely something they're going to try in the future. So I think it's very interesting to see it, and it kind of portrays where things are headed. But also too, the right hand don't always let the left hand know what they're doing. So this may be what they're showing us, but I imagine when it comes down to the battlefield, they're going to have something much more significant to use. So that's just my thoughts on it. Thank you.
Oh, for sure. This is just some deception here going on. Take us for light if you want to, but what we really got is a story. You know what I mean? But this is all. But this is a. You got to be real. I remember. Let me figure. How long ago was that? Maybe 15 years ago. They were showing these robots that at the time was still connected by wire to receive information. Was having a hard time jumping up on some blocks. Couldn't really walk stairs. But look how far they've gotten now. They got these shits flipping and doing all sorts of stuff now. It's very interesting. If you are in it, you're going to progress. And that's what I want Black equals African people to think about. If you get involved in something and you stick with it, you'll eventually see some results come from it. It won't stay primitive. It won't stay primitive unless you don't try. You know, and that's the thing, like Black Steel said, we're supposed to be trying, and this includes the Caribbean and all that. We're supposed to be trying to reverse engineer this stuff, um, uh, getting our youth involved in these types of things. You know what I mean? And again, we're sitting around talking about it takes time. You know what I mean? We said that 60 plus years ago. It takes time.
I don't think it really, you know what, Coco? I don't think it really does take time, to your point, because remember that movie that came out, Hidden Figures? He talked about all
Yes,
these
sir.
brilliant black women that helped the space program. Whenever the European needs to progress somehow, they find a black person to help them, right? So it's not a matter of skill, it's a matter of will. There's plenty of brilliant African people across the world who can create technology and things like that. We wouldn't have the video games we have right now, wouldn't be here for a black person. A lot of telecommunications, cell phones, things like that come from our minds. Then white people take it and they weaponize it. I think that we have the tech, we have the know-how and the skill. It's just a matter of applying it to the right cause.
Yeah, well said. Absolutely. You know, it's funny too. I heard, maybe it was this morning I read it or last night, that there's a movement. I guess it's something like Exit GPT or Leave GPT. It's something like that, where they're trying to get folks to not support AI because apparently the big wig guys in AI are heavy Trump supporters, and the idea is if you stop fucking with the GPTs and stuff like that, they don't have the funding to bolster this guy. I forgot the name of the recent movement on that, but yeah. Thank you for that, Black Steel. Buana, what say you?
Yeah, the reason why I put this out here is while the president of the United States, he in the West, let me deal with the West. While they talk about issues of coal, oh, we're gonna open up the coal industry and all, we're gonna, double down on the coal industry. And he talks about things like oil and things of that nature. I have never seen something like this before. Like you said, in the past, you see robots at a certain place. You didn't see the development of robots or robotic technology. And now the Chinese have, it's almost like the Chinese have, they have solved the agility problem when it comes to robots. So they kind of like have very human like movement and motions, and I've never seen that before. Maybe the West has solved that problem as well, but no, I don't know whether is to the extent like China is doing it. And as Black Steve was saying, these things are what the China is showing you now, but obviously they have military implications. Obviously, because if you don't think that they wouldn't put the same robots who's working with the Chinese sticks and all doing all that karate, they're gonna put a gun in their hand and use them as new soldiers, soldier-based application technology, military style application technology to unalive their enemies, to take out their enemies. So I think that their movement in terms of technology is very, I mean, really, I see them as a big competitor to the West, a huge competitor. And for me, I watch this gentleman right now. His name is Rob Rebuilds. We Black people are very innovative. I agree with that. I am a tinkerer. I like to tinker as well. In my downtime, I like to tinker. And tinkering is a very good thing when you want to come up with something that's unique. The guy on Raw Bills, what he does is he buys cheap cars. He buys like a $500 car that was underwater and shit like that. Some technology where it was like a Elon Musk type of car. He buys it for $1,000 and he rebuilds it. He finds out what the problems is. and he creates and he rebuilds the car from the ground up, because he kind of like had his own garage and stuff like that, and he does amazing things. He's a Trinidadian, really. He's a Trinidadian, and I have to ask myself whether a Trinidadian American. I have to ask myself, if this man was in Trinidad, if his mother stayed in Trinidad, would he have the same kind of access to do the same things he's doing in the United States if he was in Trinidad? I don't know. Because you talk about the fact that the Caribbean people need to catch up. We need to catch up in regards to technology, but we have to have access to do these things. And the fact that his mother went to the United States, and now he wasn't even in the engineering industry. He just was a tinkerer, and he just had a knack for rebuilding things. And he does it all the time now. He buys cheap model unbillable cars what has some kind of technical element in it, and he rebuilds these cars back to its original state, back to its original state. So I think that Black people would be wise to be tinkerers in their off time and their downtime, because who knows what you could discover. We have to have a curiosity in the world, like how other people has had a curiosity, trying to answer practical questions, not necessarily the spiritual questions, but practical questions that exist, that's in your hand, that you could solvable, pragmatic questions. And I think that it's a beautiful thing to do, and I think that, you could really create ingenious things, where if you decide to be one day curious about the world and start to tinker and start to wonder about different kinds of pragmatic questions and answer it on a practical level. What else can I fix, rebuild, construct, engineer? I think that these kinds of questions need to be in the mind of the Black man right now. We had enough. We are ready to know how to dunk a basketball. We are ready to know how to run up and down a football stadium. We are ready to know how to kick a football, into a net. We master these things. So now, I think it's time for us to get off of the pitch and start to build that mind muscle and try to answer different kinds of questions, because we used to do it back in the day. The brothers and sisters them used to be ingenious, because they used to be tinkerers and thinkers. The brother who created the peanut, I forget what his name is now. They used to tinker and find solvable solutions to practical problems. And I think that we need to get back to that. We need to get out of this paradigm of us being in the studio trying to create a new rap record, and I'm not saying nothing wrong with that, or being running up and down a football field with a pigskin ball, inflated pigskin ball, or kicking it in the net. I think that we need to get back to our tinkering, because the world is changing and we need to be competitors in this new world that, as you can see, what China is trying to implement. We need to be competitors as well. So I'll leave it there, Coco.
Born, you get that guy's number? Born, you get that guy's number? My engine making a noise, man.
His name is Robert Rebuilds on YouTube. Look it up. He wrote a book too, by the way. He wrote a book. But look it up on YouTube. I forget. I think it's Robert Rebuilds, something like that. Yeah, check it out.
Yeah, Bonnie, you make, this is an excellent point. We talked about that in Shoot the Breeze before. We got to be inquisitive. We got to be tinkerers. I stand by that whole. I was just telling my kids that the other day. Like, y'all got to start being more inquisitive. It's fine to focus on that schoolwork that you're trying to get this degree or whatever it is, but you could do other things. You could do stuff in music. You could do stuff in science and technology and engineering, but be a tinkerer, man. I live by that. I'm tinkering almost every day in various ways. So I do appreciate that message you gave there. One of my pastimes on YouTube is actually, I like looking up, there's these guys. Most times when I find these videos, to be honest, it's white guys or some Asian. But there's guys who be making these like remote control boats and stuff, like remote control subs and all that kind of stuff. Man, I find that so interesting. So interesting. I saw a guy ride a little RC boat along the Fames, I believe it was. Like, it's just so interesting. It'll be so nice to be able to tune in to that side of YouTube with black folks creating games, creating robots, all that kind of stuff, man. But with that said, let's welcome in our sister Cheryl this week. Cheryl, how are you?
I'm doing good. Out of nowhere, I just got this like cold and my nose is all stuffy. So if I sound stuffy, that's why.
Oh,
But
sorry to hear that.
yeah, I'm okay though. No fevers or nothing like that. But yeah, the thing with China and Japan, they've been ahead in technology. Like this is a new. Like they've always been ahead. Like I remember when I went to Japan in 2013. Like I was looking at we had CD players and I think they had something. I was like, what? They don't got nothing like this. Nothing like this. My point is that they've always been ahead. Like all they've like it's not nothing new. I'm just thinking like wow, this is cool. It's cool to look at what China's doing and um uh, the China is fueled by their desire to it's a to show they want to show the world that they're on top. And technologically, they are. That's no question. And I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with technology. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I don't think there's anything wrong with certain AI applications when you use it, for certain things. And when we get to talking about warfare, it is a scary thought. Like I think I agree with everybody on the panel about that. Like it's like one day it's not inconceivable to think that they might be able to use this type of technology in war. But China and Japan have a big problem, and eh, I know it sounds scary. People go, "Oh, this technology is great," but then what's going on? They've had amazing technology. If you've ever been to Japan, some of the things that they have in China, like it's like they live in 2100, right? we we back here. America looks like the dark ages when you go over there to the major cities and everything. I'm not talking about the rural areas, but like the major city parts. But China and Japan have a huge problem. They have a problem with population decline. And I don't think we should lose sight of that when we're so focused on progressivism and trying to outdo the next country and always trying to one up one another. It's like it's not just in on a global stage, but I feel like for black people, that's what we do. We always trying to upstage somebody. Everything's about individualism. That's what all of this comes back to. And I'm just thinking like, well, China and Japan are doing great. Maybe Europe and America are second on the list. Maybe. Um, but if you don't have the population, like if you're in population decline, like you got leaders of countries have to think about their people. They have to think about the economy and how to support their people in old age. So they have other issues that are stopping them from presenting as a threat on a global stage. And that's why, I mean, America, historically, they look at China and Japan, like, oh, yeah, your technology is great, but we can still beat you. Like, and if their technology is good, but where is it? Where is it on the battlefield? Is it coming out? Is it coming soon? Will it be present for World War III? Like what is like is this really going to happen? Is it going to be efficient? Because I don't think like it could happen. I'm never going to not say it could happen, but is it going to be efficient? What are the bugs? What are the kinks that they have to work out? if they don't have people behind the technology that are making sure everything is going the way it's supposed to go, then it's not going to work. That's where the population decline comes in. You can't. I mean, it's just so many. There's so many issues that those countries have to deal with before they can even think about implementing this type of thing into warfare. Because you got to take care of your people first. If you don't got no people, you can't operate these things because they can't operate on their own. So, and America, oh, wait, I mean, yeah, so I mean, America's having a similar problem too. And I'm not saying I'm all for innovation with black people. Let me just take it back to black people for a second. I'm all for innovation and I'm not against AI. I'm not against any of that stuff. But I think we gotta kind of, because we don't want to go down the same rabbit hole that they are going down. They're just like, well, they're in a race to see who can use technology to um who can use robots to blow each other up the quickest. Is that what we are trying to do? Is that when we talking about competing on a global scale? Is that what are we trying to do what they do? Are we trying to come up with something else that is efficient? And I'm not saying I know what that thing is. I'm not claiming to have the answers, but what is our goal? If our goal is to compete with them and one up them, okay, I get it. That makes sense. But if that's not your goal, then what is the goal? What are we putting this stuff to?
That's a fair couple of questions you asked there. But I'll say this: the goal number one is to protect ourselves. Number two, it's to profit by proliferating these technologies to folks who would need them, or our folks who would need them, right? Um, about that population stuff, I'm gonna tell you something. People forget that technology isn't just robots and engines and all that kind of stuff. Let me tell you something, man. Japan recently was able to make offspring from just male chromosomes. They did it successfully. It was Japan. Yeah, it's Japan. They did it successfully with mice about a year ago or 2 years ago. And these guys are working to get their numbers up by hook or by crook. I'm not saying that we need to get involved in that stuff. What I'm saying is we need to protect ourselves. And just generally speaking, I'm not one of those Africans who believes we should just want to be sitting peacefully on the prairie, eating a goosey soup and pounding it. I'm not one of those guys. I believe we should be able to face new challenges, be successful against new challenges. And I think we should also be working to make our lives better, whatever that means to us as a collective, however we define that, you know. And I think so. I think us being a group that's tinkering, like Buana said, and building and researching and trying to understand things scientifically and technologically, I think that's a big step for us to start to implement by now. And Black Steel made the point that it has been done, but it's probably, I guess we could say, it's not organized well, because what it is we're selling it to the same people we're trying to insulate ourselves from, and that's very problematic. Does anyone else have any thoughts on this point?
I do.
You said, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Amma. Go ahead.
No, no, you said Japan has technology where they produce offspring that male chromosomes that reproduce on their own.
Yes.
Are they fertile?
Well, from my understanding, they've only done it in mice, and the mice were viable. But mice are a mammal that we share about 99% genetic similarities with. So it's a matter of time.
Oof, oof.
It's a matter
That's
of time.
because Japan probably has the worst population decline of all nations
Yes,
in the world. So
absolutely.
when they're doing that, they're not trying to necessarily replace their population. They're just trying to they can't even make it to two children per person. They just playing at this point. They just throwing shit on the wall and seeing what sticks. Like that's never gonna be like something that's gonna get them above replacement. That's never gonna be a thing. And I think they know that. But it's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if China wants to replace their population, just send some Bahamian dudes over there with like a case of collect, and give them like about 30 years, and they'll. I mean, their population might be a little bit brown, but I'm sure they'll be able to do the job. But as far as what Amma said asks a fair question. That is a fair question. She said that if the challenge is, if the goal is to to compete in a way where we are just trying to match ourselves to our competitors, well, is that should that be our goal? And that's a fair question. How I would answer that is, um, I would think that the African man and African woman, the black man and the black woman, has the obligation to fulfill his full potential as a human being on this planet. Now, there are people, there are enemies who are trying to stifle that from happening, whether it's through war, whether it's through disease, whether it's through biological interference, all these other kinds of things. I think that I think that we should be able, as Coco was saying, to protect ourselves. And to do that, you will have to go into the fields of engineering and technology and all these other things to its highest point, or at least where you could defend yourself. When you defend yourself from the outside, within your house, you could engage in whatever manner or interest or field or endeavor you want to endeavor to elevate to the highest possible potential as a black man and a black woman on this planet. But before you do that, there are some things that needs to be taken care of first. Now, I'm not saying that you should go in the direction of the white man or the Chinese man, whatever. But I'm saying that before you attempt to engage in any field of endeavor to reach the highest possible potential, you must create safeguards to protect yourself first and foremost. So that may mean us engaging in these kinds of issues, whether we make ourselves at least, what if it's not competitive but defensible against the people who would try to come in and disrupt our rise into ascending to whatever potential that we may have or carry, what this universe give us when we come to this planet. You know what I mean? So I think that you have to do it. You don't want to engage, and I understand some people don't want to engage in these things. Well, what's the point of that? But I think that you must do that first if you want to go and engage in whatever kind of ideas do you have in your mind to fulfill, ascending to the highest possible potential of you being a black woman or man on this planet. But you have to defend yourself first and foremost. You know.
I would agree with pretty much most of what you're saying. I don't think like I think there are stages or there are levels to how far we go with the technology and for what purpose. And I totally agree with you when you say we need to defend ourselves and protect ourselves. But I think the first line of defense for Black people in Africa and the diaspora is is the um, it's going to be getting rid of the religion and the propaganda and getting rid of like all of the things that foreigners the Amu have imposed on us, because there were ways that the people of someone mentioned this in the comments. I thought that was really good. Somebody said there are ways that people in Kemet protected themselves from outside influences. I can't remember exactly how they said it, but there were ways. We had our way. We had technology that far surpassed other nations very early on. And I mean, like when people were in the Stone Age and then the Bronze Age, and people were living out of caves and eating their own shit and not showering, we were doing things that they would never even couldn't even conceive of. So I think you don't need the greatest. You don't need to have the most, like, we don't, for instance, we don't need to focus on having robots for warfare. I think there are other more, like I'm not saying I know all the ways that we should be doing everything, but there are other ways that we can perform, and we can still get in tech. We can still do all of those things. We can still innovate, we can still tinker, we can still do all of that, and still not do it in the way that non-black people do it. I think we just need to go back to the blueprint of what our ancestors did. And when it starts with getting rid of their propaganda and their religion, we have to start there as a people. We can't start where China is starting and where America is. We have to, because we're confused as a people in a way that they're not confused. We don't understand culture and being connected to our people. We can't even define what black is. We can't even define who's African and who's not. If you go to China, they know who is Chinese and who's not. They know even if they're not Chinese, they're Asian. Therefore, if there's an imminent threat, we're uniting on the basis that we're Asian. We don't have that. We don't even have that. So we can't even entertain all of this. Like maybe someday we will. And I'm not saying all black people have to be on board, but we don't have near the amount of black people available to even conceive of that. Like we like black we like first of all, first and foremost, like I said, we need to figure out who is who and stop playing these little games with, oh, this person is that. China don't got that problem. You go to China and you white and you're black or you're Mexican and you're raised in China. Let's say you have a generation, you spent a generation in China, right? You raise your first generation and second generation. Guess what? You still not Chinese. They can't do what they don't do what the Americans do. Okay, they don't say, "Oh, well, our borders are all American," because America, like if the way that a person is, if they are American, quote unquote, is not the same way a person is if they're Chinese. Because China has thousands of years of being who they are. America only has 400 years. So we need to literally start from scratch, and a lot of our people are not even on board with who we are.
Yeah, I'm always a little wary of that kind of message. I don't disagree with you, Sister Cheryl, but I do disagree with this idea that we got to do things in sequential order. You got to go step one and step two. You can't go to three yet. Don't jump to four. I think we could. I think we can be sensible enough to kind of attack those things really and truly through education, through curriculum. Right? And that's the thing that we're most unserious about. We're most unserious about the education of our future people. I think if we got that curriculum going, I'm talking about wherever blacks are, we got black people to connect to that curriculum, because that curriculum is supposed to connect you to your culture, to your tradition, to your people. I think we could kind of temper this religion problem we have, because I've started to come around to Brother Bakari and others' thoughts of, you really ain't gonna get our people out of this stuff, man. You ain't gonna get them out of it. At best, you could probably try to make them adhere to some Africanisms in these religions, but and to kind of center that a little bit. But our people are lost with that stuff. But if we can educate them, we ain't gotta educate nobody to make no robots tomorrow. but let's get the basic education that leads to potentially that outcome in the future. We'll figure out, just by our nature and our tradition, etc., we'll diversify into whatever lane we decide to go into. We don't expect our development to look like their development. And I agree with you there. If we approach it like that, we will mess ourselves up. But if we allow our development to come out of who we are, that understanding of who we are, then I think we could probably conjure up stuff greater than what we saw these Chinese people doing on the screen a second ago. Before I go to the next panelist, let me just read a couple of comments. I'm just going to jump around with it, but Trigger Happy says, yeah, when it comes to AI, there has to be full support for it on the military front. I'm skeptical of it in other aspects, but military has to be implemented. I would add, since a part of military is propaganda, it definitely needs to be used in the propaganda front. Lord of Slaughter said China had cloaking technology for 20 years. Did not know that. He says it looks just like what you would see in the Predator movies. Okay. Let me go a little further down. Trigger Happy brings up nukes. That's been a topic the last 2 days on Twitter. Isn't it time for Africa to start getting nukes? I'm not fully against that, but because I find it crazy that some can have and some can't. I think we should definitely have that technology under our belt. But he said nukes are just backward technology in the grand scheme of things. Nobody should have that type of technology to blow up a nation or nations, but you are dealing with people who are crazy. Let me go down further. Who's that? Afro Native or Cultured Education says, Bitamez, do you want to teach a class? I think I know what you're talking about with Queen Thais and you guys. Let's talk about it behind the scenes some more. But yeah, we gotta be thinking. We gotta be thinking advancement. Does anyone else want to? Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. Our brother Kofi joined us this week. Kofi, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. How are you doing? How you doing? And shout out and peace to the panel. Black power to the panel. Interesting topic. I kind of busy right now, and I'm just listening. So I'm here. I'm just listening. But Cheryl says something that really, really, really piqued my interest. Is why I'm taking a little bit of time out to call in. First of all, I want to state what what Trigger Happy said about AI technology and how we could use it. And Africa does need nukes. The whole world has nukes. The only reason why the UAE and United States are the arbiters of who has the right to have nukes. Notice, all white nations that have nukes, no problem. A black and brown nation that have nukes, problem. Right? But when it comes to AI, so I heard yesterday that the AI company that has a contract with the Trump regime when they were attacking Venezuela, they wanted to utilize it. Forgot the phrase that they're using. I think it's a autonomous AI where it just attacks people. And so the casualty numbers go up because they don't know who's a person, who's not. It attacks people indiscriminately. So they were like, hey, look, you can use our technology, but because of this quote unquote fluke or bug, you cannot use it in this manner. We will not allow you to use it in this manner. So, Pete Hegseth or whatever and Trump or whatever, the person is the part of the Department of quote unquote war. They was like, well, you better do it. If you don't, they're gonna put them in like contempt of you using the United States. There's a whole bunch of nonsense. So when it comes to AI, the United States is using military AI technology. But the reason why I called up for Cheryl was saying, and it's something that I've been saying the whole time. So when I talk about science and technology as a whole, I always say that, yeah, Cheryl was right. Back in Kemet, we had a lot of things and a lot of technology that we had, but we had thousands of years of tranquility, peace, where we could sit, think, ponder, study, and observe. We were the scientists. We were the Imhoteps of that time, all the way from the south all the way to the north. We have that. But due to the transatlantic slave trade and the sub-Saharan slave trade, there's been an arrested development in our technology. Right? We were the witches. We were the warlocks. That's what the Europeans called us, because it was a science that they didn't understand. And it being, if the church didn't understand it, or the king didn't understand it, or whatever, it was just witchcraft. It was evil. It was quote unquote black magic, which is a good thing, but they're using the negative connotation. Right? We were the witches. We were the warlocks. We went to have the witches brew and take this and take that remedy, and you feel good and you feel good, and they couldn't explain it. Right? That's us. Right now, like Sister Cheryl said, we have to start from the drawing board. And when I talk about evolution, biology, figuring out what biology is, what is that? White people has kind of left us. They got the base. They got the base from us. The base from us, like biology, biology, chemistry. They got all that from us, but they have surpassed us. Right? If anyone understands how the periodic table works, the white man has created elements that adds to the periodic table. You have your regular basic elements, but them being in the lab, now that they're having, Dr. Clark says the white man has never had a golden age without subjugating, stealing, and subjugating other people. This is how they have their golden age. So now that they tie the African people bound in the race of technology and innovation, we now have to catch up. We cannot be like those white people in the 14, 13, 1600s and say, well, that's just some black stuff. Here we are. Oh, that's just some white stuff. Like, that's the white man. Like, you can't do that. You can't do that. Now we have to play catch up. We could start saying that when we have our own labs. Just don't be ignorant just like them. Just, oh, well, it was a white man doing it, so that don't mean nothing. Like, we have to understand what science is. We got to refamiliarize ourselves what science is, what they're saying, how science works, how things are authenticated, how things are peer-reviewed and viewed to say, like, you know what, this works. When things are peer-reviewed, the Europeans are looking at it. The American Europeans are looking at it. Then the Americans go in the scientific journal and say, you know what, this is good. Then the Europeans, then the Scandinavians look at it. The Americans look at it. Then the Chinese look at it. Wow, this thing works. That's how it works. If anyone to say, well, it was some Swedish people, oh, that's Swedish science. That's ignorant. We got to get past that. If we want, I think Buana said, we need at least to be inclined enough for us to have defense, understand science, understand bioengineering, biochemistry, engineering, weapons development, understand all of that, at least to the point of defense. We have to start from scratch. Anything that they invent, because that's what the Chinese do. Chinese like, ooh, wow, Americans did that. Let's study it. Take it apart, re-engineer it, make it their own. That's what we have to do. So I just wanted to add to that, and I really love the fact that Sister Cheryl said that. I think we really need to start really thinking critical. And Africa does need nukes, and it's pretty much it.
Appreciate that, Kofi. I don't know if you guys saw this, man. Because if you don't try, you'll always fail. A couple of months ago, Kofi is probably familiar with this. A couple of months ago, they introduced a bullet train from Boston to New York. It took 6 hours to get here. Meanwhile, that same train in Asia would have probably done that in about an hour, right? It's because U.S. doesn't have good infrastructure. As a person who teaches science, I can tell you a lot of Americans are not good in science. So why am I saying that? There's an opportunity there. There's an opportunity. Once you take your time, wherever you are, you work, you tinker, you get your understanding of the world from a scientific perspective, you'll be surprised to see how easy it is for you to compete and also to insulate yourself away from these people. These guys are, on a lot of levels, these guys are clowns. But they have the military power right now that makes them, the big deal. But we got to try. Let's welcome in Icon Fire this week. Icon Fire, how are you?
Yo, my people, respect to all of you.
Yes, sir.
Nice vibration. You feel me? Positive. A couple things I want to refer to. People was talking about China and population. Greed and riches is what's causing population decline. It is not a natural thing. It is greed and riches in America, Europe, and Asia. The reason for Asia is because they're trying to be like Europeans. The reason for Europeans is they are the ultimate greediest people in the world. You feel me? So what if you do the math, what happened is they tell you to have 2 children, right? So what they're doing is hoarding their money. So they don't want anyone else to enjoy the luxury of the world. So what they do is kill their children. You feel me? But they still want to have sex because everybody having sex. You feel me? So that's not the problem. The problem is they killing their children. So, but it's because of greed. You feel me? They want to enjoy themselves and selfishness. Greed is selfishness. So they want to enjoy themselves and all that. So that's what's going on. You feel me? Especially with our black women. So it's greed and an elevated position in life, such as American life. And it was forced on us in the Caribbean. You feel me? It was forced on us. But women in general are the major participants of this anti-human and depopulation drive.
Bro, I know I'm cutting you up. Well, how you make women the scapegoat again of the problem of technology, bro? Like, really, what the fuck?
All right, just calm down,
Wait,
bro. You feel me? Calm down, bro. You see, a lot of yes, the system is there that's obliging these things. You feel me? But people have their own personal lives and they're making decisions. They didn't fall down and kill the goddamn baby. You feel me? So please, sir, be quiet. You feel me?
What's this got to do with technology, man?
Well,
you're talking about technology, science, and engineering, and you somehow work it around to black women, man. Who hurt you, bro?
Okay, I'm sorry. It's not black women alone, bro. Most people in Europe is 45 years old. So what are you talking? I said woman. Of course, I'm black, so of course I speak about my black women and black people. But it's a European problem we're talking about for the most part. You feel me? So chill. Jeez. No, but, so sensitive. Anyway.
I can. What we're really talking about is this demonstration that we just saw in this video. I don't know if you saw it from before you came up on the panel. But we're talking about the Chinese having these robots and connecting the idea of this technology to military and protection and defense, etc. That's really what the conversation is about.
Yeah, I was going to refer to that also.
Well, yeah, that's the main thing to talk about because I'm lost too as
Okay.
to
Well,
black women.
I was listening. I was listening earlier, and I was listening about the population thing that the lady was speaking about. So I was just referring to that. But I do want to talk about China and technology. Now, I mean, I don't know if this is the same bro. If you mean that was talking about Kemetic cosmology, Egypt technology. You feel me? And I agree, and I would put it even in how spiritual we are in terms of how advanced we can get if we understand what science is. You feel me? Science is science. Well, to me, I'll put it overall that science is God. You feel me? Science is raw. Science is God. And that's what Egyptians was formulating and telling us. And that's what Europeans, the Greeks, and these people understand and they know. They know that God decides life and death, and using God, you can decide life or death. Using God, which is fire, earth, water, and air. You feel me? So that's what we need to and that's on the physical level where God is physical. You feel me? So we must understand that America and all of these people that have all these bombs, it's actually God they're using, because God is also the devil. You feel me? So it's actually God they're using to do evil works. You feel me? Because when it comes to weapon, it can protect us as a people. So actually, it can do good. You feel me? So that's all I want to say to my people, that yes, we must endorse technology and even pick up from where Europeans and the Asians are at right now. You feel me? But go ahead, my people.
The black in Kemet, it says the black woman is God, right? The black woman is God. The black woman is held to the highest esteem, equal if not unequal to the man, because all life comes from that woman. The black woman is God on goddamn earth. Don't none of you forget it.
Yeah, but it's really her essence. It's not an individual.
Her essence, her being. Everyone, all life comes to it. When in Kemet, they look at life, they study nature, they study netaru, they study nature. All life comes from the female aspect. That's why they
Yeah, but we
deify
are
the woman. That's why they
calm
deify
down,
the
but
woman.
we are
That's why
yeah,
Ma'at
but
is
calm
in the
down.
form
We
of a
are,
woman. Ma'at is a form of
and
woman.
that's
Ma'at
why,
means truth. So the women
and that
are the truth. Don't fight that. Don't fight life.
and that's why they use her against you, because she's powerful.
How can somebody use against me that is me, bro? How can I use something against me that is me? If I come from it, I'm a part of it. What are you talking about?
You must not know your world.
Let's
You're in a Lulu world. First of all, black women discriminate on your type. They don't like
Nah,
hoteps.
talk about the black
And
women that you're around.
I
Don't talk for
respect
me.
hotep. Hold
Don't
on,
talk for me.
why are you talking to me? Be quiet.
Because
You
you're
sound like
generalizing. Because you're generalizing.
you
Talk for
are
yourself. Talk for
no,
yourself.
you sound stupid. You don't even know what
No,
world
I
you
don't
in,
sound
man.
like you.
Be
See, I don't
quiet.
have to do ad hominems. I'm attacking what you're saying. Now you're getting
Yeah, but
mad because you're
people
getting
are people.
checkmated. Because you're getting checkmated
People
on
are
your
people.
ignorance.
People are people. People can be dysfunctional. Who is, hold on. How come you allow black women to be ravaged by the white man,
Negro, what are
and
you
you
talking
can't
about what
do
I
nothing?
allow? You
And
don't even know my
she's
world.
God.
I can
Negro,
fire
I
She's
every
don't
God.
time
even
you
know
get
what
on
I
here,
allow.
bro. Every time you
She's
get on here,
God.
I can fire. You bring the intelligence of the show down, man.
Yeah,
Like you
but this
literally
dude
lower
attacked
the
me.
intellect of the entire because you talking nonsense, man. That's
It's
why
not
we
nonsense.
attacking you. You're not making any sense. Like what? Like that's why he said, "What did the woman do to you?" Because we here talking about the technology in China, and you get to talk about some the women are the reason for the depopulation. Nigga, what? What?
Oh Lord.
You fucking for real?
Bro,
This is
this is
why
not a red pill room, man. Go take that red pill
you
shit
bringing the
somewhere
whole
else.
you killing the vibe of the show, man.
Take that
You
red pill
killing
shit
it.
somewhere else, man. That's red pill bullshit.
Man, shut up, man. Don't talk to me.
See,
You killing the
he mad
vibe,
because you know
man.
I'm right. That's red pill bullshit.
No, you man. I'm
Bunch
repeating
of
what you
single
said.
black men that can't get
You're
no
an idiot,
women.
man.
So all they do is talk bad about black women because they can't get no women. It's a bunch of incels, bro. It's a bunch of incels.
Nigga, I got a black woman, so what are you talking about? You're an idiot. Just be quiet, man. You sound like a little. I don't even want to diss you, man. Be quiet.
All
You're
right.
doing it all on your own.
Let's move on to the next topic, man. But Black Steel, I like what you said just now. It's something, Mike, and you got to consider too, man. Like, if every time you come around there's an argument, maybe you're the issue here. So we was having a real cool conversation, and then all of a sudden you brought up black women. For what? For what? And it just took away from a great conversation we was having about science and pursuing science and why we got to pursue science and what Buana said earlier about tinkering and all this. Like you just pull that conversation to a place where it didn't need to go. And by the way, I know you know that guys here is going to get on you about that stuff. We can't have this type of thing happening every time you come around, bro. Shoot the Breeze topic number 3 tonight. Shoot the Breeze topic number 3 says, did we hold these Ghanaian elites accountable yet? This came with 2 attachments. I'll cue up the first one. You guys should be able to see my screen, I think. Yeah. We'll watch this, and then I'll play the second attachment right after.
Thousands into slavery. Then he pivoted to palm oil, mission schools, and imperial favors. Along Ghana's coast, Chief Nyaho Tamaklo built a fortune from human bodies. Then he completely reinvented himself when abolition arrived. He struck deals with the British, donated land for Catholic, Presbyterian, and Anglican schools, and opened classrooms for his subjects, even the children of people he once owned. He sent cash gifts to King George V during World War I and received ceremonial recognition in return. And his family's legacy? His descendants became Oxford-trained diplomats, one of Africa's first UN representatives, and the first African headmaster of Achi Mata School, the foremost president of the Ashanti Bar Association, political power brokers, and attempted coup makers, a family that later builds one of Ghana's most famous private hospitals. The Nyaho Medical Center, still operating decades on. From slave routes to statecraft, from coastal raids to hospital wards, and this is just one dynasty. Subscribe now because the next story makes this one look tame. The story is told.
Sorry. Okay, so that's the first attachment. Let me cue up the second one so I can share my screen with you guys as well. While we wait for this to queue up, make sure you guys hit the like button for me. Folks kind of join the conversation that we're having tonight. I know really was a great conversation so far, man. So share that and cues up. Okay.
After 1873, demand intensified. The Bank of England was required to hold substantial gold reserves to back the British pound. 1/4 or more of British banknotes was required to be backed by gold. But Britain regarded gold mines a wasting asset, so they looked to their colonies for gold supply. And where else could they turn to for much of their gold? The Gold Coast, modern-day Ghana. You see, between 1877 and 1885, a gold rush erupted in and around Wassa in the Gold Coast. And in eastern Nazima, one ruler sat on territory that suddenly mattered to empire, King Kofi Blay. British observers recorded that mines under his authority, including the Nanwa mines, were worked by corvée, forced slave labor. The gold did not extract itself. European concession seekers acquired mining rights through networks influenced by Kofi Blay and his sub-chiefs. He controlled the land, controlled the labor, and received tribute from the gold trade. When slavery was formally abolished in 1874 in present-day Ghana, Kofi Blay's wealth did not vanish. It shifted form. From coerced labor in pits to signed concessions to the privilege of elite Anglican missionary education for his descendants, the Blays prospered. Then came the next generation. Robert Samuel Blay, University of London scholar and Ghana's first Nzima lawyer, and together with George Alfred Grant and others with slaver ancestors, he co-founded the United Gold Coast Convention. The UGCC dubiously claimed to be Ghana's first political party, and serving as president of the Ghana Bar Association on 2 occasions, and later as member of the first board of directors of the Bank of Ghana. To keep the network closely knitted and alike, R.S. Blay interbred with a family cast from the same mold as the Blays, the Mold family of Jamestown, Accra, with ties to the Dutch slaveholding family who traded in pre-independence Ghana. The Vanderpoys. From that union came his twin daughter, Mary Chinnery Hesse Nablay, currently Chancellor of the University of Ghana, Ghana's premier tertiary institution. And before that, she's been a diplomat who's chalked numerous firsts. First African woman to be appointed resident coordinator of the UN systems and resident representative of the United Nations Development Program. The very first woman Deputy Director General of the International Labor Organization, giving her the rare distinction of being the first African woman to attain the position of Undersecretary General in the history of the United Nations. From another marriage, her siblings are Dr. Makoa Blay, former Director General of Ghana AIDS Commission, a member of the first cohort of medical doctors trained in Ghana in the 1960s, and the Very Reverend Ama Afo Blay of the Ghana Methodist Church, the first female Director General of Ghana Education Service. Also in the lineage of the Blays is the nephew of R.S. Blay, Freddie Blay, lawyer, politician, and former chairman of the NPP, and majority shareholder the Daily Guide newspaper, whose daughter was named in a 2024 expose as part of the awardees of Unmerited Ghana Scholarship Secretariat scandal. Another passage to perpetuate elite reproduction. When wealth survives conquest, abolition, colonialism, and independence, it does not disappear, it reproduces. If one family can travel from forced labor in gold pits to Ghana's top institutions, wait until you see the next dynasty. Follow now the continuation.
All right. I had never heard about these folks until recently. And I remember asking that question. I think it was just me and Black Steel that night, actually, on the panel. And I remember asking Black Steel if he thinks that we've ever really dealt with the traders on the continent. And by the way, if you guys know of other family names or know some videos that talk about these other families from West Africa who were involved in that Ma'afa, by all means, send them to me, because I think we gotta expose some of these people. I think we gotta expose the traders, and these guys are still benefiting to today, right? That's how serious that betrayal was. They're still benefiting to today. Black Steel, what say you to what you just saw?
Man, man. It was very disturbing to see that. Uh, but you know what? It makes sense though, right? Because the European had to have somebody to facilitate their theft of resources, right? There had to be somebody there. And it makes sense to kind of continue to keep them there because, you can continue to, use them. So the problem is every group of people has traitors, right? There's not a single group of people on this earth who doesn't produce traitors. And it's well documented who the traitors are. In the United States, we call somebody who's a traitor a Benedict Arnold. Benedict Arnold was somebody who betrayed the American Revolution cause to the British, right? This man, his name is now synonymous with a traitor. Same thing with, the former president of Norway who sold his country out to the Germans during World War II. But I think when you have these traitors, these people who are traitors, who betray the people, who betray the movements and the will and aspirations of the people, there has to be consequences. Because if there is no consequences, right? If there is no punishment against these people who move against the unity of the people, then this just all it's going to do is just reinforce it. So we have a situation where this family of people who literally betrayed African people for almost 200 years, and they were able to fund their wealth and their ill-gotten gains and pass it on to the next generation. There were no heads chopped off. There were no hangings. There was no exile. They were allowed to stay there and continue to enrich themselves. Right. So first it was the gold mines, and then it was, the slave trade and the trade in bodies and whatnot. And all this time, these people are living and getting wealthy and doing prosperous things, and there's no consequences for that. There has to be a time where these people, when they step out of line, there needs to be some type of punishment, because if you don't, you're going to have this situation here. All right. It's not. But again, I think part of that, though, comes from a unified vision. And I think that's one thing that African people have. African people have been kept divided through many different means with various levels of success. You get divided on Christians and Muslims. You get divided on religion. You get divided on the language you speak. You get divided on what tribal group you belong to. And all the while you're divided, the enemy can come in and take advantage, find a few supporters who they can enrich and use them to maintain control. So I don't think there's anyone that's been held accountable yet for this. I don't think people really even know too much about this. And I think that's by design, because you want to keep the hand that's the puppet master has to stay hidden behind the curtain. And I think that's kind of what we see here. So yeah, I'm disappointed in this, but I'm not surprised. Again, every group of people has its traitors, so I will stop there. Thank you.
Well stated, Black Steel. Let me hear from Kofi. Kofi, what say you?
Yeah, this is a bit surprising, but like Black Steel said, it just totally makes sense. Because last week Buana mentioned, I think I might do a show about that, about the Zanu guy, with when she was with Karen Hunter saying that Black Americans got no culture, and Karen Hunter got a African American professor to like check him. That was a very 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 good show, but the reason why I'm mentioning is that he mentioned that, well, there's people that we're talking about culture and stuff like that, but he also mentioned saying that those groups I forgot what specific reason we were talking about. He said those groups and those borders, that nation no longer exist. So there's nowhere you can actually go and say, hey, you're responsible for or for sending us, saying across across to the Americas, yada yada yada. But he said those people no longer exist. So in Ghana, I was kind of similar across the board, where you have these people that and these nations that no longer exist. So it was kind of like messed up and troubling for me to hear, but it makes sense because we invest a lot of time. I mean, by default, because we're here in the so-called new world. But and I keep telling people this, and I probably mentioned this before. If there was a stand with Paul Mooney, and I'm going to butcher the joke or whatever, but I'm not going to really cite the joke. But the punchline was like basically, like, hey, look, you got Africans were sold into slavery and stuff like that, and those Africans just saw them Africans just take it. He said any other people would have came and get their people. They just let their people get taken, and that was it. And everybody's laughing. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, no. We keep thinking that the Europeans just came there, manipulated the African people there, fight one against the other, give them both sides guns, saying, hey, just give me your POWs. And that was it. They just took the traders, put them on a ship along with all the other people, and they left Africa, and that was it. No, they stayed. Why would they leave? They needed resources. They needed human bodies, right? Strong human bodies, and they needed the resources that was there. That's why it's called the Gold Coast. It wasn't called the Human Trafficking Coast. It was called the Gold Coast for a reason, right? So they try to extract as much human resources, everything that Africa has. There was, I forgot the name of this boat. I think I forgot the name of this boat. It was this boat where they were packing in all the Africans, and they barely left the coast, and it was this big, huge revolt that they had, and they figured out how to get the ship back to the coast and let all the black people, let all the African people out. I was like, wow, I never heard that story. So it's very disheartening to hear that. And as I'm hearing this legacy that they established and it's not being checked, is it like, it's hard to say. Is it like, well, shit, that's them Black Americans and them Black Caribbeans and Black South Americans and Black Caribbean people, so fucking ain't my problem? Because why is this not being checked at the same time? And it's kind of tribalistic in a way, but at the same time, I will give Ghana her grace and say that there's there is a return back, a return that they've been doing. I believe they also apologize for it to become a citizen and things like that. But at the same time, if you got all this wealth and that you have from the slave trade, if you want Africa's sons and daughters to come home, I think they need to facilitate that whole movement. Whoever comes, if you're a African from descent that's coming from the New World, you need to hit us off with, like, I'm not saying just give us reparations. I'm not saying that, but you should welcome us back home. There should be some small incentive that you have, because you have generational wealth that accumulated from human death and suffering. Something has to be done about that. I really need to research more about that, but thank you for that. I'm not going to take up any more time.
No, I appreciate that response. You touched on several things that I agree with wholeheartedly. Why is this unchecked? And Ghana, by the way, gives us Kwame Nkrumah, which I will never diss Nkrumah. But Nkrumah had to know too that these people were these people. So it's an interesting thing that these people haven't been checked. And Kofi made a point that I've been thinking about too. People like this who have this generational wealth like that, they should be sponsoring, like how Israel has that thing where their kids from New York and all about be going back to Israel on Israel's dime or someone's dime, but not theirs, right? Be going back to Israel. There's a name for it. I can't think of it anymore, but it's done to make them feel connected to that land and that culture. And I think families like this, who we just saw on the screen, should be doing stuff like that. Reach out to the Caribbean and try to get some school children and stuff from, young age, 13 or whatever. Try to get them to come to the continent and see where their ancestors came from. Some of them at least, With that said, man, let's hear from Ike and Fire.
Yeah. I expect all of that. None of that stuff surprised me. Of course, I think, they should pay reparation also. Africans are kind of hypocritical. They think they can hide these things, and they think we should forget it. And they also think that present day have nothing to do with anything. That's how Africans think. But the families are still living. You heard that lady is university dean. One of them is a judge, one of them a pastor, all that stuff. You see me? So yeah, they should pay. There is a lady, since you asked for references, there is a lady, the president of Nigeria, his second great grandmother or something like that. She was a slave owner or seller in Lagos. She married one of the white boys and he brought her to America, and she remained as a slave owner in America. Her name was, I think, some Madam Tinubu, something like that. But you can look that up. You feel me? She came from Nigeria, Africa, and came here as a slave owner.
All right,
So
I'll
that's it. I don't have much. That's it though.
All right, cool. Let me just show the chat some love for a second. Earlier, Trigger Happy said about this story, it kind of proves to the construction of capitalism, particularly black capitalism, needed the meticulous backing of collaboration and enslavement to create the system we have now. Lord of Slaughter says traitors will always be amongst us if we keep trying to save people who shouldn't be saved. Lord of Slaughter, shout out to you, man. That's so true. That I was talking about Bakari, it was last week, and I had to tell him, man, I've come around to this thing of I really am truly. I'm not trying to argue with no hashtag Americans no more. You want to be American, man, be that, man. Because, yeah.
Yeah, Quaker. Now, when it comes to separating ourselves like that, right? I do understand or overstand that, a lot of people are a waste of time. But we must understand that this movement that is going on is not no pushover shit. People have died for generations trying to change stuff, right? So it's not no pushover stuff. It's not no thing that you can go around a corner and hold a little goddamn meeting all to yourself and all that. Ain't nothing gonna change like that. We need a critical mass. And therefore, hence the reason we have to speak to each other, even to people who don't want to hear. You feel me? Because sometimes it might take a person 5 years, 10 years to collaborate, to calculate. You feel me? Or just to get their brain functioning. Because a lot of people, their brain are in dysfunction. So they are being persuaded otherwise, glitter and glamour, and you feel me? So we need our people, and we need at least a critical mass. Now, the people that have some sense, They're not even 1% of black people. You feel me? The people that have any sense, I'm telling you, it's like if you check it in the world, it's like 10% of black people. You feel me? And when it comes to America, it's even smaller. You feel me? I'm glad I see a lot of people going to Africa and shit. You feel me? But still, a lot of people still don't have the mindset of what really things take to solve this problem. You feel me? Okay, you have this great, powerful country bombing up the place. You feel me? So we have a big old beast to fight. And we can't be no David. We have to fucking try to be a Goliath also. So we need our people. We have to still talk to our people. We have to still try to speak to our FBA people. We have to, because you have arrogant Jamaicans. I still have to try to talk to them. You feel me? And sometimes I might have to go toe to toe with them. And that's how it goes. I think that's what it takes. You feel me? Thank you. Because you can't make indiscipline rule. You can't make ignorance rule. You can't make dysfunction rule. Sometimes you gotta combat it. Thank you.
You know, that's well stated, and I don't disagree with all of it. In fact, I'm a big person on the idea of the critical mass. But what I think a lot of slaughter would be getting at, or the way I now see it, is our first effort mustn't be to try to convince nobody no more. I think we gotta still preach the gospel, so to speak. But we trying to get to our youth, because if you're not gonna change nobody today, like you said, it could be 5 or 10 years. If you're not gonna change no one today, then it don't make no sense focusing on those folks today. Let's focus on the youth, bring them up, get them used to, being Gaviites and Pan-Africans, et cetera, to work together and talk together. But that focus, that right now focus, but the first thing I do is I'm going to go argue with some hashtag American. Nah, I'm good on that. Let me build with like the same little 1% you said. Let me build with the 1%, and let's try to double that to 2% by next year, and so forth, and so on. You know what I mean? I think that's really what we're discussing. Um, Someone has to mute something, but let's welcome in Brother Bakari this week. Brother Bakari, how are you?
What's going on, man? I'm great.
Good. Thanks for coming through.
Yeah, man. Thanks for calling me up. I'm gonna be honest, man. I don't know what we're talking about, so I'm just gonna speak, and the next person can get the mic. So I don't want to get on here and just go to rambling and talking. I don't know what the topic was.
So, Bakari, the topic was, we were looking at a family in Ghana that they are like the elites now in Ghana, but their origins was they participated or cooperated with the slave trade. And that's how they built that generational wealth and prestige. So we were just talking about this one family and, basically how to deal with traders. Because if we know who the people are, who who the families are who are benefiting still today off of it, how come we haven't checked them?
That's a great question. If you know who the traders are, you got. Why haven't we checked them? They should be checked. Should be more than checked, but I think that shows our mindset as a whole, and I'm talking about. I'm sorry about that. I'm talking about black men as a whole. That shows our mindset, right? Like saying, why haven't we checked the traders in Ghana? Why haven't we checked these white folks and Arabs in those countries? We know what they did. Why haven't our men stepped to and checked? Nobody. But that have to change. Like, yeah, those people over there in their family got generational wealth from participating in selling their own people out. Yes, they do need to be checked. I can't say what need to be done on here to them folks, I guess. But yes, house burned, almost people hurt, a whole lot of things should be done. But we as black men, we sat back and we allow people that did this stuff to us, and we try to figure out which one of them is okay. And that mindset, we're gonna have to change. We need more of a warrior mindset instead of, I heard y'all say something about trying to get people on board. And I know ain't nobody talking about trying to get people like that on board with you for as a pan-African mindset. I don't know, but I'm just saying that's me. If we had more of a warrior mindset, there's a whole lot of people that would be checked. I yield the mic.
I appreciate that, Brother Bakari. Bwana, you've heard everything everyone else had to say. What say you to all of it?
Yes, sir. So this video to me personally is a sleight of hand, and I would tell the brother, admonish the brothers, be careful of the sleight of hands going on. There are traders in Africa, yes, and they must be dealt with. But there are traders in the Caribbean who also had who had slaves. By the way, black men and women. There are black women and men who had slaves in the United States and in South America. So yes, there are people who participated in slavery and degenerate things and things that was against black people. But I do not want the people to lose track of the sleight of hands. Okay, you're talking about generational wealth. There is a book by a person called Eric Williams, who was the prime minister of Trinidad and Tobago. He wrote a book called Capitalism and Slavery. Many of the institutions, in particular, I'll just name one, Harvard University, was built off of slave labor. The monies that built that institution, Princeton, down the line, all these Ivy League universities, no one knows the names of the families who profited from these institutions. Not only that, you have insurance companies who still functioning today. You're talking about one specific Ghanaian family, but you don't know the names of the families of the insurance companies, even the Bank of America and some of these institutions, what was relabeled and things like that nature. You know, they got their initial monies from the slave trade as well. Nobody knows the names of these families who continue to create and produce generational wealth in the West. And if they was to show you the monies that they would have gotten from the slave trade, it would make whatever these people in Ghana making look like a little piece of money, look like nothing. Icon Fire said something that was important, and so did Brother Bakari. Brother Bakari said, when are we going to step to these people, the real people, the people who, not the little victims or the little people who get a little bit of money on the side, but the real people who created these institutions that currently exist today, that get billions and trillions of dollars in the West right now, and even in Ghana. These institutions that still exist, their families still making money, you know. They still making interest off of the financing, which was initially created off of slave labor. We talking about Ghana, a little guy from Ghana who making a couple $1 million. We need to address the real people in the room first. Maybe that may be backwards, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't go after the traders of black people who look just like me and you, but I want to address the institutions themselves and the real people in the room first, not the little people, but the real people in the room first. The institutions, the insurance companies, the banks that currently exist in the West right now. Exist right now. This sounds to me like Africans are responsible for their own slavery. Look at these people and what they did to the African people in Ghana. There is a greater enemy in display that I think that should be addressed in the room. Yes, these people should be called into account, but there's a greater enemy at large. There's the Icon Fire talk about the beast. He talk about the real beast that exists. And I think that these people should be addressed because their names are not, they should be in the dock as well. You bring in the African family people in the dock, they should be in the dock as well. Where are the white families? What are their names? Because they still making monies off of the interest. They still making money. So I'm saying watch the sleight of hands. Because I understand you want the narrative is black people are responsible. Yes, some are, but there's a greater enemy involved and at large, currently existing to this day, still making interest. So I don't want to forget them too. You know what I mean? Because they are more responsible than the little petty little people who was making a couple million dollars now. They are more responsible. So I'm saying that we need to address the big man in the room because we big men too. So we need to address them as well. Matter of fact, more so. But that's how I look at this problem, Coco. I could be completely out of line with it, but that's how I look at this problem.
Well,
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. If you want to.
So two things. So the book that you were referencing with Eric Williams, that's the same Eric Williams that wrote From Columbus to Castro?
I think so. I think he wrote From Columbus. I think so. I think so. Cool.
Yeah, that's
all right. Yeah. All right, because I have the Columbus to Castro book. If that was another book that he wrote, I need to get that book. And in the beginning, you also said something that there's traders everywhere. There's traders in the Caribbean. There's traders in America that also had slaves. So
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So my understanding, as far as like how America worked, right in that time, was that they had during the system of slavery. In order for you to free your family, you had to buy your family. And usually some people will misuse this as saying, well, black people, I'm not saying you're doing that, obviously. White people will say, well, black people partook in slavery too. Because look, here's a black man that bought another black man. But when you go a deep dive into it, he's buying his wife, he's buying his daughter, he's buying
Kofi, that's what I've heard before. But the reality is, just as there are black people right now currently who misuse and mistreat Puff Daddy and all these music producers who take advantage of black people. There were black men back then. It wasn't only buying family members. It was a capitalist system. They was taking advantage of it. I know that the theory is, they was just getting their family back. The reality is they were slavers as well. And they was trying to fulfill their coffers and have economic benefit from that plantation system. It wasn't just family members, brother. There are books written on this, by the way. There are books written on this. So there were slavers in the Caribbean. There were slavers in Americas too. And they wasn't just getting their families back. And there are books written on it, brother. We would like to think that every exercise in terms of slavery with black men was a noble one, and they was just trying to get their families back. No, just as you have black men right now who take advantage of black people, you had black men back then who was doing the exact same thing, brother. Don't make that mistake because it's propaganda.
Okay, so thank you for that. I wouldn't put it past them, but I think this is still a slippery slope. Even I'm going to take your word for it, right? Because you're a very good source as well. But this is a very slippery slope. So we don't want to say, because someone could use this and Twitter and say, okay, see, we're again, like Koku said, we're responsible for our own ma'afa then? Well, no. And I don't think it's the average freeman or black person that was free that was engaged in this activity. I would preface it that I would say that if you're going to state that typical type of history. The same thing, or someone say, well, oh, black people sold black people, so we're responsible for our own enslavement. You see what I'm saying? I'm saying what you're saying is right, but at the same time, you have to put it in the proper context. As far as saying, look, this wasn't something normal. It wasn't like the moment a black person got their freedom in America and the Caribbean. Well, you know what? I'm going to take part of the capitalist system of selling human bodies. You see what I'm saying?
It was a book called Black Slave Owners of the Carolinas. And when you go through that book, the majority of the black slave owners in the Carolina was mulatto, octoroon, quadroon, stuff like that. And they just called them black. A lot of black people were buying. And every time I get ready to talk about this actor, I forget his name. And he's a popular actor. He's a popular actor too. But he was talking about his family being enslaved by black people. And he said that's the story that I'm going to have his name before this is over. That's the story that he was told. So when they looked into it, yes, black people did own his family, but that was his family. And it was illegal for them to give black people freedom papers. So sometimes, I'm not saying Bawana is wrong. Do I believe that was black people? Yeah, it's black people now that would enslave our ass right now. It's some of these folks that call themselves FBL. If they had the opportunity, they'll grab some of the people they call tellers right now and enslave you if they could. But sometimes, like Kofi said, it is a slippery slope if we don't study the whole thing of black people owning black people in America and in the rest of the diaspora. But yes, I will say I do believe that it was some Uncle Ruckus's, some Jesse Lee Petersons, because these coons you see today, it's a legacy of cooning. So yes, I do believe it was some that owned that would have owned some. But like Kofi said, I agree with some of the things Kofi said because I've studied some of those. It was about the how that slope can be slippery, and they don't tell you the full story of black people owning black people in the diaspora.
I think, interestingly enough, Buana's response kind of highlighted something to me. When we have these types of discussions, I think we have a tendency to want to, point it back to the white man and what they do and what they've done. And to be honest with you, when I saw that story, I know the white man is behind what they did. They were just was working with this guy and profit. I know it's the white guy. We didn't build slave ships and send our people all across the world and mistreat them and all that stuff. But I think in pro-black spaces, because we always want to be mindful of who the real enemy is, we would sometimes skip over something just to get to them. But we got to really talk about these guys who are traitors and really dissect what led them to become traitors, and try to understand that so that we could root these people out as they come up in the future. We have a better chance of identifying them and recognizing them when we see it. So we got to talk about these guys who look like us, right? It's not to blame them and make them the slaver, but as some checking has to happen with this white boy especially. But you know what? There's some checking have to go on here too. So I just want to point that out, that sometimes we hyper focus on who the ultimate blame goes to, and we're not wrong in doing that. But sometimes we will pass right through some bullshit that we're doing or have done, and we're not addressing it. Sister Cheryl, what say you to all of it?
Sure. If you could please bring back up the question or the prompt, because I forgot exactly what it said, but it's important. Okay. Okay. So did we hold these Ghanaian elites accountable? And I guess to that I would say, well, what system do we have to counteract to what system do we hold them accountable under? Because we can't hold them accountable under Christianity, because according to Christianity, what they're doing is God's will. So if we don't have a system to hold them accountable to that's going to counteract that, such as um, some an indigenous ancestral practice, if we don't have values steeped, if they don't have values steeped um, in their own culture, and these type of things like integrity, if we don't have a system that says, hey, you can't do that to our people, these are our people, then we cannot even come to say that we can hold somebody accountable, because under Christianity, accountable for what? This is what we're supposed to be doing. That's what Christianity says. Oh, well, why am I rich like this in Africa and all my people aren't? Because it was God's will. God was supposed to make me over these people. So according to them, and this goes for Black people today too. Um, we always, when religion is a disease, because we always try to justify certain things under religion. Like we and some things, it's not even just justifying under religion. Christianity, Christianity, it doesn't say specifically do these things and do that, but it's a system of domination. So when certain things happen, it's like, yeah, okay, well, that's happening, but you know, so God elevates certain people over other people, and so therefore it's supposed to happen. And I think with psychological warfare, when they brought in these missionaries, um, and they brought in missionaries prior to the slave trade, right? So they pick these non-black people come into this black country, and they pick and choose who they can manipulate the best, and they use certain psychological warfare, some certain tactics to get them to see things from a white perspective. And so you got a lot of people who are not on the continent scratching their heads like, how are you guys just as confused as the rest of the diaspora when you guys don't even have a whole bunch of white people? You're not even in close proximity to white people, but they are in terms of their ideology, because they Black people on the continent, they have an ideology that is culturally not theirs. So culturally, they're just as misplaced as any person in any part of the diaspora. We all, and that's why when you see Black people who are Christians all around the world, we all have the same. We all have this tend to have the same issues when it comes to uniting. We all think just like white people when it comes to Black people, other Black people. We're always making excuses, always hotep this and hotep that. That's white people. That's white people talk. That's how white people talk at the water cooler and at the dinner table. And we don't understand this because we don't understand white people. We just understand white systems and white ways of thinking. We have white ideologies, whether we're on the continent or not. But and this is something that I try to explain to Black people who are not from the continent. You don't have to be in close proximity to white people to adopt their culture. You can not have no proximity to white people, but white ideology is so strong, and it that's their culture. You ask any African, you walk down the street. I was in Accra. Do you think if if I'm walking down the street and I'm gonna ask somebody in Accra, what I I understand you're Christian, but what are your ancestral practices? Do you think any of them know? Do you think any of them know the depths, like they can explain a system, a value system that stops them from being overtaken by another group of outside people? They have no clue. Okay, so when you say are we holding these people accountable, it's nothing to be held accountable for, because they're in a culture, they're in a value system that values the things that they're doing.
I will.
Appreciate that,
I would like.
sister.
I like to mention something.
Go ahead.
It's you're right. When it comes to Christianity, it doesn't matter where you are. Once they sell you sin, then everything else just falls into place. And I'm going to use my mother and my family as an example. My mother passed like 5 years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, whatever. My mother died as a Christian, right? She understands certain things doesn't make sense, but it's all about faith. It's all about faith. Whatever. But at the same time, growing up in Guyana, they know what these things are, just like the Ghanaians know what these things are, right? I was raised Christian. I was raised, you're a black Christian Guyanese man. That was my identity. I was not an African. I was not a West African. I was a black Guyanese Christian, born again Christian. That's what I was. So when I hear my mother, when something go wrong, like we're Caribbean, they probably hear the same thing. If something goes wrong, she's like, "Hey, what's wrong with you? There's some water in your face or something like that." Like, why you throw? What does that mean? You're baptizing me again? Or one time, my mother came home and she was like, "Did you go to the grocery store?" I'm like, "No." "Did you have eggs?" I'm like, "No." It's not even Halloween. It's probably like November or July or something like that. I see eggs. Like someone threw eggs in the driveway. You sure you didn't go and walk down the driveway and drop eggs? I'm like, "No." Like, what are you talking about? She's like, "You know what? I think these people are trying to do something to me, I'm like, what? What are you talking about? Oh, nothing. I'm like, wait, not until, and that always stayed with me. I must have been like 14, 15, but that always stayed with me because certain things that my mother did was not Christian at all. So it made me like, you know what? Something's wrong with this boy, Hey, come. Give you a bath. I got this thing from some. I'm like, what, give me a bath for what? Like, what are you doing? You know what I'm saying? Christianity do libation. They got libation from Africans, so they do the whole libation and all that other stuff. And I saw something in Ghana. Also, was this woman? Oh, I gotta find that video. I saw a long time ago. She was like, "Look, we are losing our culture to Christianity," and she spoke to the medicine man, the Obeah man, and the Obeah man was like, "Look, you see them Ghanaians going to church or whatever, and they go to the pastor and they say, 'Oh, pastor, my foot hurt. Oh, pastor this, pastor that.' They come back and it's like, you know what? I got this problem to the Obeah man. I got this thing, that it doesn't, it hurt. My leg hurt. All right, take this, take that, take this, take that." They find hopping, running, doing somersaults and go, "Praise Jesus." And the man's like, "What?" But he understands. So to Sister Cheryl, just because some of them may know, but some of them may not know, but you got to understand, some of them are pretending, because I see this. They pretend because they know there's something spiritual that's way deeper than Christianity. Because you cannot take that how you were raised, especially if you are in Ghana. Christianity is a new thing. Christianity, and I tell my children, Christianity is like Scientology in America right now. That's the Scientology of Africa. Christianity is the Scientology of Africa. There's certain things that you were just raised for hundreds of years that's just not going to go away. That's all I wanted to say.
You said Christianity is new in Ghana.
Well, I mean, in comparison to African spiritual systems and things of that nature, yes, it's fairly new.
Okay. I thought you meant something else because
No.
it's been there. It's been there long enough for them. Like, I don't think sometimes we understand how detrimental, like, European religions are to like us. I think it's not about whether they know or they don't know. It's a value system. So it's not about knowing or not knowing. It's what it is. This is the essence of Christianity. Like the way that our people act, and we all got family members that act this way. This is the essence of what Christianity is. It's a system of domination. It doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to be practical or moral. It's just might is right. So if I decide I want to take, if I'm a leader and I decide I want to take all of the money out of the village, then I'm going to do it because God told me to do it. God ordained me to do it. Now, whether or not morally they think it's right or not, it doesn't matter. That's overridden by their value system.
Appreciate that, Sister Cheryl. In the chat, the matron, shout out to the matron. Make sure you guys subscribe to the matron. That's at our matron. She does these readings every week. Really good conversations as well. Make sure to check her out. In the chat, she says, "We are copying the modern day whites that do not punish their elites. Ultimately, most people want to be the elite and won't punish them because they want to be them." I appreciate that, matron. She also asked earlier, "Is the year of return a cash grab?" I want to thank all of you guys for your participation tonight. I'm going to make that the last prompt for tonight. But before you guys leave the panel, I'd like you to give me a shout out, give your shout out for the week. You guys in the chat do the same. What are your shout outs? Something positive you saw in the black world or in your neck of the woods? What would you like to shout out this week? I'll just go down the line. I'll start with Black Steel. What would you like to shout out this week?
Let's see. Shout out Black History Month. You know, it's over, but you know, Black History Month is every month in my household. Shout out people of Iran. Shout out to people of Cuba. Keep holding on. It's gonna be rough. But I feel like, you know, we'll overcome this. And shout out to the panel and everybody on the panel.
Appreciate you, Black Steel. Sister Cheryl, what would you like to shout out this week?
Oh, sorry. I don't know. Shout out to like all the black people who are not like really trying to involve themselves in the affairs of, you know, of the Amu in this country. And what I mean by that is all of the political, I guess, back and forth. You know, you got Amu on the left and Amu on the right, and you know some black people are agreeing with there. Some are leftists, some are far right. But shout out to all the black people, just you know, they just looking from the sidelines and not getting involved in that, because that's the Amu disagreeing with each other. We have nothing to do with that. So shout out to all the people that just stay out of that.
Appreciate that, Sister Cheryl. Kofi, would you like to shout out this week?
I would like to shout out to the black woman, to the black man, and the black family. Right, my wife and I were having a little conversation about that. We were all out and about in Brooklyn, noticing that Flatbush is looking like Greenwich Village right now. and we're just saying like, hey, look, for as long as we keep our numbers up, and as long as we know that we're all that we got, we're good. So shout out to black people everywhere, and the little small ones in Iran, the ones in Venezuela, the ones in Guyana, and remember, black love and unity is what is needed. So shout out to the black man and the black family, and to you, Koku, all the time putting together a beautiful show.
Appreciate that, Kofi. Thanks for coming through. Brother Bakari, what's the show this week?
Shout out to you, Koku, to the panel, and just a shout out to black folks, man. That's it.
Yes, sir. Appreciate that. In the chat, Trig Happy says, shout out to Mr. Imhotep. They did a tribute to him on Kamji verse, King's Monologue, and Trill Black Channels. Yeah, I saw Kamji hosting that earlier today. And I noticed a lot of people was talking about Mr. Imhotep this week. I guess it's the anniversary of his death or his birthday or something like that. Not certain. But shout out to Trigger Happy and everyone in the chat who participated tonight. Last but not least, Buano, what would you like to shout out this week?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut. You mean Michael Imhotep?
I don't think it's that Michael Imhotep. I think it's a younger guy.
Oh, okay. I'm about to say, wow. Okay, I'm sorry.
No sweat. So shout out to Brother Bakari. It's obviously he's on that Mississippi moonshine tonight, so he's not talkative tonight because obviously he's on a Mississippi moonshine. Shout out to the Epstein files, and the reason why I say shout out to Epstein files is the Epstein files is killing this idea globally. Globally, this idea of whiteness, in particular white male patriarchy, it is destroying it completely. The lunatic in the White House, as Brother Bakari usually says, he is trying to flail and do anything and everything he can to cover up his misdeeds and his degeneracy. But no person in the world is gonna get close to a PDF. And all the men and all these elite people who are in positions of power and influence are just caught up in this thing. Maybe some Africans either, as well, as provided triggers would have said, they should be caught up too. But shout out to the Epstein files. I think that the world needs a new narrative which includes the other people of the world, and these people who champion this idea of whiteness and white male superiority must die. And if this is the spear, if the Epstein files is the spear which is gonna kill it, we are gonna ride the Epstein files until the cows come home, because there must be a new narrative that exists in the world where this white male person who is supposed to be superior and all wise and all knowing, he must die and be buried with a big rock over him. There must be a new narrative. So we can't look to him, the black masses in particular, can't look to this white male elitist as someone who is all-knowing, and we should just look to him to be influential and make all our decisions in the world. No way. We're going to show him for what he really actually is, which is a degenerate. And we have to create a new narrative in the world, whether it's by the indigenous people of the world, the black man, or anyone else who want to hold a different type of narrative. So we're going to expose him for who he is and get rid of him. He must be replaced completely. So let him flail, let him make grand claims, let him talk about how great he is and how great all the accomplishments that he has made. We're going to show him for what he is with that Epstein file and use it to destroy him completely. The world must change and come up with a new narrative, and the black man must assert himself and have a say-so in the world. So I would just challenge the brothers to just get into your place and get into position, because we next. We We must have to control the next narrative that exists in the world. So I would just leave it there. I hope the brothers are safe. You all brothers be good, and I'll leave it there.
Bomb drop on that.
Appreciate you, Buana. A lot of Salt says shout out to all the ancestors, but especially Fannie Lou Hamer and Ann Atwater. Culture Education says shout out to the new ancestor, Nana Wagan Faye, Dr. Charles Finch, whose 40-day ascension was celebrated 2 days ago. Did H-Rap Brown recently pass away? I feel like I saw some mention of that. H-Rap Brown. But shout out to the freedom fighters, man.
Wait, Charles Finch passed? Dr. Charles Finch passed? Oh my God, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I gotta get his book. I think his book is his book is called Black Genesis. I was meaning to get that.
Yeah. Shout out to all the truth talkers, the people who are using their head and thinking and tinkering with ideas and tinkering with understanding, man. I think that's what we do best here. So we'll be back at it next week. Until then, man, you guys stay safe out there. Be good. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast with your host, Koku. If you like what you just heard, we hope you pass along our web address, bittermedicineblogs.com, to your friends and colleagues, and share our show to all your social media. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. This has been a KWAZ radio production. Join us next time for another session of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. Follow us on Facebook at Bitter Medicine Show, Twitter, Bitter Meds, Tumblr, Bitter Meds, Instagram, Bitter Medicine.